Hello, Mavericks. Nice to see you here. This is Rob Reinhold. I know you were going to expect Corey Halliday to be here, but sorry, he is on vacation, so you're stuck with me today. Let's start out with where we are in the week. So it's Wednesday. We had a strong start to the week in equities, and then they basically collapsed. And they collapsed really because of the second point of the Fed speakers. The Federal Open Market Committee, Governor Brainerd, who has been one of the most dovish Fed governors, wanting to move slower than everyone else on inflation, basically turned completely a 180 and said, we're going to be more aggressive than we were before, and started talking about the reduction in the balance sheet. Now, we talked about QE, and we've seen lots of QE over the past 15 years. And before 15 years ago, before 2008, we had never really heard of QE before, quantitative easing. And that's where central banks basically flood the money supply with new capital, and they start to buy bonds and they start to buy mortgage-backed securities. Now, the way they do that is they literally go into the open market, they print money, and they buy bonds from the government, which is them. I know it's kind of silly. And so you have one branch of the government that sold the bond, so the U.S. government owes money, and then you have the Federal Reserve that bought the bond. They have to pay the Federal Reserve interest. So the U.S. Treasury is paying the Federal Open Market Committee interest on those bonds, and then what happened was the Federal Open Market Committee was taking those interest payments and reinvesting into more bonds. That's quantitative easing. They're about to start the opposite, which is quantitative tightening, where they will no longer reinvest the interest payments, and they will also allow things to mature. So if one of these bonds matures, they don't reissue it. This is something that is definitely going to have some consequences in the market. And the market doesn't really like that because more money supply means people have more money to spend. People have more money to invest. It's actually one of the things that's been pushing all of the financial assets up higher, really, for the last 2 years. That's about to come to a close. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that. Commodities were fairly mixed. The dollar was strong. We'll take a look at everything here in a second. Economic reports, U.S. services ISM came in as expected, but look at that Canadian PMI. Boy, that interest or that manufacturing number was very, very strong. However, we saw very, very little movement in the Canadian dollar off of that news. So here we are with the weekly performance. We've got the S&P down 2%, the VT, the World Index, down 2%, the crypto basket down almost 7%, gold flat, and oil lower. I want to take a look first at the equity markets, and you can see here we had a really nice rise here over the past 2 weeks. Came back. This was a nice bounce that was starting right here, but you can see we have pretty much turned over hard, where we have broken below this support level. We did not make a new high. So until this gets broken, we have to assume that this is going to be moving in a little bit more downward action in equities. We have the 13-period EMA starting to cross lower. We have RSI starting to slant lower. Basically, all the things we look for in velocity telling us that over the next, let's call it 24 to 48 hours, the velocity of the equity market is likely to be lower. So let's take a look at some of the performance so far in currencies this week. Let's take a look at foreign currencies here. Ozzy had a great day on Monday after the RBA came out. The RBA really didn't come out and say anything substantial about what they're going to do with interest rate policy, but they came out and said that things are going better than expected. So the market liked that, and the Aussie Dollar had a really nice day on Monday, up 1%. Since then, it hasn't really done a whole lot, and has actually given a little bit of back. As you can see, the euro has been the worst for the week. The euro fell early in the week, and it's actually done just what the Aussie has done, opposite. It's actually come up a little bit off of that bottom. So the biggest movers were Euro Aussie at the first part of the week. now they're reversing a little bit. We'll take a look at this currency cross when we get to it. The yen was weak. And the one thing I do like about the yen being weak was that the yen is still weak in a strong market. Remember, the yen is supposedly the biggest currency of safety, and it has always acted that way. Over the past 20 years, whenever people panic, they pile into the yen first and the dollar second. People are not piling into the yen. The Bank of Japan came out last meeting and said, we're going to buy unlimited amounts of Japanese bonds. The market didn't like that because that just means quantitative easing forever. Kiwi is having a decent week, and the CAD is also having a decent week. The CAD is the one I really want to focus on here because Aussie's had a nice run over the past couple months. Kiwi's had a nice run. The CAD to me looks like it's in the position to take over for the best currency. We'll take a look at the charts here in a second. Let's get over to performance in cryptos, and it was a bloodbath. Just an ugly, ugly week so far. This is only halfway through the week, and you can see just heavy, heavy selling. We weren't bullish on cryptos going into this week. We thought they were likely going to hold in, but they didn't hold in. They really turned over hard. And I think with equities, we see continued downside in the cryptos as well. So as you can see here, our market outlook, we started the week at a +2. This has absolutely been degraded. There's no question about it. Going to be degrading it all the way down to a -2. If we take a look at the VT, this is the world index. We see the same thing here. We see a breakdown of that past low. That's telling us we have this downward channel until it stops. And it could keep going. It could stop today. We have no idea where it's going to stop, but the momentum is to the downside in equities. We take a look at the crypto basket. The crypto basket is looking even worse than equities. We just broke through this support. Got other little support down here, but right now, cryptos look like they're in a free fall. So there's a famous saying in trading, don't try to catch a falling knife. Do not try to catch it. Let it hit the floor, and then you can safely pick it up once it's hit the floor. But right now, it is in free fall, so no buying of cryptos at this point. Taking a look at what we have on the schedule for the rest of the week, we do have the FOMC minutes coming out here in about 45 minutes. They have moved the markets before in the past. I think they're going to move the markets again. That's why I do like dollar going into the FOMC minutes on the long side. And then Friday, we have Canadian employment report. So this week's outlook for equities, we came into the week with a pretty good bounce. Friday, we had a hammer candle. We had a confirmation candle on Monday. And I came out and said, hey, the risk on. I actually took a lot of risk on positions, especially in the equities and futures market, that were losses. So this is where, as a trader, you have a premise. You have, okay, this is what I think is going to happen. And sometimes you nail it. And sometimes you say, great, I nailed it. Everything's working according to plan. And sometimes the market does something that is completely different than you expected. And this is where it's very difficult for a new trader to basically say, oh, I was wrong. Let me just scrap everything I thought and do a fresh analysis of where the market's going. And the market it looked like it's heading lower here in the short term. We have the FOMC minutes today, and then Friday we have the Canadian employment report. Now let's go in and look at each currency on an individual basis, and let's see what's going on with each one. We're going to start out with the cryptos, and I don't have anything good to say about cryptos. As you can see here, we have broken below that last support level. We are likely headed back down into this area in Bitcoin. So 38,000 to 42,000 on Bitcoin. The trend has weakened substantially from a +2 to a 0. And you can see the velocity score. We are negative on all three. So we're moving to a -3 velocity score on Bitcoin, meaning that the short-term price action is definitely down. We don't think that this is in a downtrend, because it's not in a downtrend on our trend score. It's basically gone from a +2 to a 0. Hey, there is no trend at the moment. But for right now, the short term is to the negative side. We take a look at Bitcoin Cash. Same thing. It drops down to a 0 on trend score. Drops to a -3 on velocity score. Everything negative here on the short term 4-hour chart. Ethereum has been the best, in my opinion. That doesn't mean it's good. When you have the best of a piece of garbage, it's still a piece of garbage. But we talked about how if you are just convicted? How about convinced? If you're convicted of going long Ethereum, that sounds like some sort of crime. All right. If you're convinced that you want to be long cryptos, I think you got to be long Ethereum, but I don't think you should be long at all, because we have lost some of our trend score, and the velocity score has gone from, hey, plus or everything looks great, to everything looks terrible very, very quickly. I just don't like any of the cryptos here whatsoever. And if you take a look at which one's the weakest, we have Litecoin is about to break below its 50-period moving average, which is going to be the first sign of, hey, this thing's in some trouble on the downside. So -1, -3, everything in crypto does not look good at the moment. Let's take a look at Forex. So here we have the dollar, and we've talked about the dollar being in this range. So we have this range of dollar, and it's been there for a long, long time, months and months. However, we do have a range. We trade from lows to highs. We are coming off of the lows here. We got a little bit of momentum, and you can see here, the trend hasn't changed, but our momentum score, our velocity score has changed. So in the short term, I actually do like dollar to the upside. Whether it can get all the way up here to the top of its range we set last month, I doubt it. But I think we could easily get up here to this resistance point, which is definitely enough to make a trade off of. So dollar short term, I do like to the long side. Let's take a look at yen. Yen is a -3 on the trend score. Nothing good about this trend. But if you take a look at velocity score, we've just had a big move lower. We're basing here, and you can see that we kind of broke out of the top of that base. So to me, that tells me that we've got a rally that's likely to be coming in the yen, but probably up to this resistance levels where it turns down. I still like the yen short, but I don't like it short right now. I like it short later, after it has a bear rally that we can sell it into. Looking at the Swiss franc. So Swiss franc, when we met together on the weekend, we saw that Swiss franc had rallied all the way up to the 50 MA. It turned back hard. So our trend score is back down to a -2. And if we take a look at velocity score, we've got a -2 on velocity score. So remember, the rule is if it's 2 or greater on either side, this is a good currency to trade. So we do have a signal here on Swiss franc to the short side. If we take a look at euro, euro has gone from a -1 to a -2. So the trend score is now saying, okay, this is now trending enough for us to get into a trade. Here's the problem. The short-term velocity score has actually risen. We are now trading above our parabolic SAR. We've got some relief from the RSI, and we've got the EMA is basically flattening out. I do like euro short. I like it quite a bit, but not here. So I've looked at yen. I like it short, but not here. And euro, I like it short, but not here. The only thing I like short right here is Swiss franc. Let's move on to the pound. The pound has been a -3 for a while, and it continues to be a -3. But look at this price action. This is not the kind of price action you want to trade. We want to trade when prices are actually moving, not when they're stagnating. As you can see here, for the last 2 days, the pound has virtually gone nowhere. So any trading in pound has been very frustrating, and the velocity score has actually improved a little bit. So looking at this, I got a -3 on trend, but a +2 on the short-term velocity. To me, it's just a no trade. I'm looking for other things that make a little bit more sense. Speaking of making more sense, here we've got the CAD. So CAD has had a decent week this week. We had this pullback, we had this bottom, and now we're starting to march higher. We are running into some overhead resistance up here. But the trend is actually strengthened, And our velocity score has strengthened as well. So +3, +2, this is also a green light saying, okay, CAD looks like a good tradable currency over the next 24 to 48 hours. Moving on to Aussie. Aussie has just been a stellar performer, and we've been riding Aussie for really the entire year, having big runs and just pullbacks, big runs and pullbacks. You can see here, we just made a run to a new high. We're probably going to see a pullback, probably going to see just a little bit of a pullback, and we're seeing this in the velocity score. So the trend score is still a solid +3, but our velocity has declined. We're now seeing the EMA starting to turn down for the first time in days. So we do think there's going to be a pullback in Aussie. If anyone wants to go out and short Aussie, I will try to talk you out of it, because this is likely what you're going to see. We see very short pullbacks that don't go very far. Those are very hard trades to take because your timing has to be impeccable to grab a couple of nickels. You're running out into traffic to grab a couple of nickels. It doesn't make any sense. So go with the things that are trending and velocity in the same direction. Here we have the Kiwi, and the Kiwi on a trend score looks really quite good. A nice high base. We really love high bases at Maverick, but we don't like to trade during the high base because, as you can see, just like with the pound, there's been very little opportunity to make any sort of money at all on Kiwi. The velocity is backed off a little bit. So again, just not a whole reason to get into Kiwi here. When we look at trend scores, this is how we started off the first of the week, with Kiwi being strong, Aussie being strong, the trending currencies, and the downtrending currencies, pound and yen. Well, since that time, we've had some movement. Euro and Swiss franc have both weakened. We've had all the cryptos weaken substantially, with Ethereum being the best. And we've seen the CAD actually strengthen. So this is kind of the big picture. When we talk about trend score, this is the big picture of, okay, what's moving right now? And we have Aussie, Kiwi, CAD on the upside, and pound, yen, euro, Swiss franc on the downside. Those should be the pairs that you're hunting in. Those should be the currencies you're hunting in. Now, again, that's the big picture. That's what's happening over the next week or two. We want to know what's happening over the next 24 to 48 hours or for the rest of the week. So we're going to take a look at specifically velocity. And all of our cryptos have just fallen to the worst velocity possible, -3. The Swiss franc has weakened. The Kiwi has weakened. The yen has strengthened a little bit along with the euro. We can see pound and CAD actually strengthened a little bit. And dollar's still there at a +1 on velocity. Actually, sorry, dollar should be over at +3. Dollar should actually move over to +3 where we've got US dollar. So if we take a look at our board here, this is what we've got. We've got the dollar is tradable on a short-term basis. I'm not making any call on the dollar's in a great uptrend and we're going to break out to new highs. This call is right here, right now, the dollar does have some bullish momentum. And if you're looking for a short-term trade, I think you can take a look at dollar. The only currency that gives me a -2, -2 or greater is Swiss franc. So I am looking at bearish trades on Swiss franc. Pound, like the dollar, it's got a -3 trend, but a +2 velocity, meaning it's been very weak overall, but at the moment, it's having a bounce. These are difficult trades to take. I highly recommend to not take -3 +2 trades. They're likely to go up a little bit, but once things turn, the downside's going to be a lot worse. So I don't like pound here as a trading vehicle. And you can see here, CAD is bullish. So the things we're looking for, let's pair these up. We're looking for dollar Swiss franc, and we're looking at CAD Swiss franc is really what we're looking at for the next 24 to 48 hours. There's not a whole lot for us to look at with this market at the moment. So let's take a look at those pairs. I'm going to put up first dollar Swiss franc. All right, so I'm going to start off with the progression of a daily chart. So here we have a daily chart on dollar Swiss franc. And you can see we've got some support here, some resistance up here. We just came back down, we made this bottom, and at this point, we just broke above the parabolic SAR on a daily. We have a nice strong reading from the RSI, and the EMA is starting to turn up here on the daily chart. This is all bullish price action. Look, we don't know how long this is going to last, but what we do know is that right here, right now, the dollar has upward momentum. If we take a look at a 4-hour chart, it's saying the same thing, that we have some upward momentum. We've got an EMA sloping higher. We've got parabolic SARs going higher. We have an RSI that's backing off a little bit. If we go into an hourly chart, which is what I'm going to be using for the trade setup, you can see what we're getting here is a high base. We love high bases here at Maverick. This is one of our favorite patterns here because the strongest currencies will high base. Once we break out of the top range of this high base, which will probably coincide with the breakout of the parabolic SAR. So we're looking at maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours away for this currency to come down and put some pressure up on this. So for me, I'm going to put an alert here at 93.40 to be long dollar Swiss franc, looking to put a stop in below the bottom of this low base. So 93.20. So really an entry at 93.42 and a stop at 93.18. It's going to be 24 pips, about 0.3% is going to be the risk on this. Now that is my second favorite trade. My first favorite trade is this one, CAD Swiss franc. Let's do our progression here. Here's the daily on the CAD Swiss franc. And you can see here, this daily chart looks a lot better. We had a very shallow pullback. We ran up, we based, we ran, we pulled back. And you can see here, we're starting to get some good momentum to the upside. RSI going up, EMA going up. We have not yet broke above the parabolic SAR here, so this is only a +2, which is acceptable. We go down here, look at the 4-hour chart. What it's telling us is we just had this nice run. EMA has moved up, but we've just crossed below the parabolic SAR. EMA is starting to flatten out. RSI is losing strength, telling you, okay, this is on the daily chart, it looked like a good trade to the upside, but short term, it looks like we're having a pause. We don't want to be buying when the pause starts. What we want to do is we want to buy when the pause ends. And again, a pause will be a retraction or a pullback. And again, we can draw some lines here where the pullback is possible to go to. Maybe here at 74.40 is going to be an area, or we could base and break out. I like this one the best. This one looks the best on the daily chart. It had the best scores in all of my scores, but when I come in here to the 1-hour chart, which is what I use for my entries, it's telling me right now it's not the time to go long. It's just not the time. I've got everything working against me. I've got EMA that's curled moving lower. I've got velocities. I've got parabolic SAR that are broken. And I have an RSI that's now dipping below 50. I need to wait for those things to change. And until those things change, it's really going to be sitting on the sidelines waiting for things to change. That's really the only setups I see here at the moment. Let me talk about the next big trade that I'm really hunting for is euro dollar. I like euro on the short side. I like Aussie on the long side. However, you can see here that we've had a pretty big fall. 2 months ago, we were at 162. We're now down here at 144. That's a big move. That's about a 12% move in a currency cross. That's a big move. And we just recently had a move from 149 down to 144. That's a 3% move in 4 days. I'm really hoping to see a bounce. I would love to see a bounce here on Euro Aussie, and I'd like to see that bounce come up to 146. 146 would be an area where I would be actively looking for a new short entry in Aussie dollar. Now, this is looking out over the next week or two. This is the trade I'm really watching. But until then, for the rest of the week, I'm watching stuff like CAD Swiss franc and dollar Swiss franc, and that's about it. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. I think the market sell-off is likely to deepen. So, Swiss franc is typically a currency of safety. Yen is a currency of safety. These will probably hold up quite well if the market continues to sell off. The problem is, the only things that really look like shortable right here, right now is cryptos. And, you could maybe make a case that Aussie and Kiwi are going to give back a little bit of their recent gains, but that's a very short-term trade. I don't love that trade. The trade I like best is, like I said, CAD Swiss franc, dollar Swiss franc. I don't think they're big trades. I think you're looking at 30 to 60 pip winners. That's about it. That's all the trade has in it. But those are the correct trades at the moment. So this week we will be meeting tomorrow, doing a psychology lab, and we're going to talk about programming. This is the very first step of making sure that you are psychologically ready to trade. Is your programming where it should be? Your programming will completely dictate your thoughts and your feelings and your actions. If you need to change your thoughts, if you need to change your actions, you're always acting at the wrong time. You're always getting in at the wrong time and out at the wrong time. You can't change your actions. You need to change your programming because your actions are simply a product of the thought process that your brain goes through. So we're going to talk about programming. And then, of course, we're going to be doing the currency room over the weekend to get you ready for next week. Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone have a great day and happy trading. Goodbye.